New review for a game that's probably gone under your radar with all the Mind's Eye stuff going on. The Alters. This is a game that was initially revealed maybe like a year or two ago. I remember, or maybe it was even at the Game Awards. But this is a very interesting game where basically 2 years ago, it was first revealed. Yeah, look at this. But effectively, you go and play as this guy stranded on like a space station is what it initially appeared to be. But they're all like clones of you filling it out. And it's just very, very interesting. It was like, what does this even mean? It was revealed also at the PlayStation, like State of Play or whatever they called it. And it just was interesting, but it kind of, eventually we forgot about it, moved on. It was like, okay, well, there's other things very dramatic going on. But reviews just dropped, and the reviews are quite solid. It's sitting in the high 80s on Metacritic at the moment of recording this. And I really think that this could be something quite interesting. So let's see what they said about it.
Hey, do you have any regrets in your life? The Alters knows that you do. And that's why its sci-fi story about morally and ethically questionable cloning on a wildly inhospitable alien planet hits home. It's comparable to a playable Black Mirror episode that envisions technology run amok. Science has granted us the ability to talk to versions of ourselves who took the road we didn't travel. It then asks, what if some of those people hate your guts?
Tell me what's going on. What have you done to my body?
Also, what if this is the product of a mad scientist and/or corporate exploitation? Combined with a simple but effective resource harvesting and base management balancing act, as well as the constant specter of approaching death by a scorching sun, it's an effective pressure cooker of both interpersonal and environmental hazards.
Basically, it's Fallout Shelter meets sort of like an emotional friendship game where like you have to manage the relationships with your crew members, which are different versions of you, and you have to keep them productive and, motivated and all of that. And then it's also like an actual management game of gathering resources so you continue moving and escaping the impending doom of the heat death of the sun. Very interesting. Very interesting.
When Jan wakes up to find he's the only survivor of a crash landing on an uninhabitable planet, the Alters immediately sets an isolating and eerie tone. This planet is remarkably and literally otherworldly, and those splashes of color and distortions are created by this universe's brand of unobtainium called Rapidium.
Kind of reminds me visually a little bit of like Control. Control mixed with Returnal, mixed with maybe like a little Death Stranding. I like the vibe.
That striking feature on the horizon is the expedition's mobile base. There's a palpable sense of urgency as you scrape together enough resources to survive and get the base moving before the sun comes up and broils the surface. It's not difficult to extract enough organic resources to feed Jan and fuel the base. It's kind of a light version of resource games like Satisfactory, but you do have to keep an eye on the clock to make sure you're not overworking Jan or exposing him to too much nighttime radiation. The planet's surface is also littered with radioactive anomalies that are initially all but invisible until you're right on top of them. So navigating this maze-like map has a fair bit of tension to it, even though there are no actual aliens trying to eat you. Soon you develop tools to make those anomalies easier to deal with what feels like a Ghostbusters proton pack. However, it pretty quickly throws new and unexpected types at you that mess with your perception and make you approach them in different ways. That kept me on my toes. When you enter the base, the Alter shifts perspective to this diorama-like view. That instantly gave me XCOM or Fallout Shelter vibes, except here you can actually run around as a character within it.
I tell you what, guys, I love these kinds of like sim management games. So I dig this. I dig it. Especially like, I love the min-maxing of how do you like optimize the layout, like how do I get the most out of this? Maybe I have all of the crafting stuff in one layer and then I have all of the living quarters, maybe on the bottom, because I don't really need to be there that frequently, and I just love that kind of thing. I love it. I eat this stuff up. I really do. It's also interesting because like you can assign alters to work in different rooms, similar to like a Fallout Shelter, or to different like machines and stuff that are working on extracting materials.
Laying out the base with the new room types you unlock is a flexible puzzle that usually has very low stakes. There's no build time. You can freely move almost anything around to make the best use of your limited space at no cost, and you can delete rooms for a full or very generous refund of resources. That's fun to
Yeah, if this were a mobile game, it would be check back in 12 hours to see that it's been fully built. Or you can pay $5 to get it now. I can't stand mobile games. Like, there are some good ones out there, but a lot of them, man.
mess around
Toxic.
with. For a bit, I was moving rooms I needed to access right next to me rather than walking to them. But it does get disorienting. Running around wondering, now where did I put that communications room, got old quickly. I ended up trying to minimize how much I shifted things around so that I could memorize what was where. It eventually becomes a little tricky as you expand the base and cram in more large rooms and storage, all while working around that immovable block in the middle. And it can be convoluted to reach an essential room when you need to. But being able to basically start from scratch whenever you want to means it's never too frustrating.
Well, and to a certain extent, it's like, you made the layout that you have. So like, you literally can't blame anybody but yourself. You know, at some point it's like, I don't like the way this is laid out. You laid it out though. Yeah.
One of the first and most important rooms you'll build is the womb, which your ethically questionable corporate middle managers tell you to set up to kick off the altar's big experiment.
The Rapidium's there. Use it. Make more versions of me.
Combined with Rapidium and a quantum computer that reaches into a map of Jan's formative memories and stimulates the life he would have had if he had made different choices, it creates clones of him with different specialties and philosophical differences.
Do you, remember your name?
All of them share an abusive father and a loving mother, but where they went from there changes drastically based on choices like if they left home, went to school, sold their house, met their wife, and other pivotal moments. Yeah, it's a little silly at times that each version of Jan has different hair and a unique way of speaking, but it's a fun idea to think about and a great and novel way to explore these characters. Alex Jordan, the actor who plays all the Jans, is clearly having a good time finding ways to set them apart.
Are you getting mushy with me? What? No.
It reminds me of Tatiana Maslany playing clones in Orphan Black.
This is a nice restaurant, isn't it? Yeah, 5 stars.
I eventually created 6 clones across the 30 hours it took me to complete the third act, which is not all of the possibilities. You have to play through at least a couple times to meet the rest, and I'm looking forward to another run where I know all the goals in advance and can optimize my approach to gathering resources and unlocking new technologies. This turns the altars into a management game of assigning your team of specialists according to their strengths, but you rarely have enough people to do everything you want as efficiently as you'd like.
Great. Why don't you just hand us over for experiments already?
Some of them are essential for every playthrough. You need the scientist to unlock any new technologies, for instance.
I have news about the anchor blueprints you asked for.
But most,
I don't think I've seen a resting animation like that in any game.
technologies, for instance.
I have news about the anchor blueprints you asked for.
But most, like the
Like, it's a very human thing, but I don't think I've ever seen that before. That's good.
Doctor of the Guard, are optional, and choosing them will make playthroughs at least a little bit different with their unique production bonuses and personalities.
It's amazing how different we are.
Here's a small thing. I do wish the menu for selecting a crew member to work a job would list where they're currently working. I always had to back up a step to make sure I wasn't taking someone away from an essential role, then go back into the menu and reassign them. Managing your relationships with your
Yeah, that's one of those little like quality of life things that can be patched. And it's often like a lot of these devs have been working on these games for like 4 or 5 years. So they just get to know them like the back of their hands. And it's, you know, when you're really up close to something, you kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. And I think sometimes devs can just be like, oh yeah, I guess if you don't know like the back of your hand, some of these little tricks or little nuances, yeah, you might not see that. But it's always funny to have like little stuff like that that stands out. Like with Claire Obscure, I was like, one of the things I would love to see is if you could have loadouts for the party, like different weapons, different armor, or just cosmetics if you wanted to distinguish it that way. And then also, of course, most importantly, different Pictos and things like that. And Lumina, that would make a big difference in Expedition 33, being able to swap to different types of damage depending on the boss that you're fighting instead of having to do it manually. I wouldn't be surprised if they update the game eventually and add that type of thing. You know, there's just little quality of life improvements that can be made, but you know, this is just another example of that.
Your altars is partially about satisfying their basic needs with good food, enough rest, and some entertainment, such as gathering to watch one of these legitimately funny live-action sketch comedy videos.
Have you ever noticed how often we finish each other's sentences? Yeah, we have lived together for way too long. Right. I feel like we've probably had every conversation 2 people can have. Right. So we always know what the other one is thinking. Right.
But it's also a game of getting to know which yawns
That's
value
good.
compassionate responses and which will thrive with some tough love and bluntness. You have to read the room.
Well, if you put it that way, I can try.
Some of them have self-destructive tendencies that need to be kept in check. They'll work fewer hours if they're unhappy, and can permanently die if they're abused or left to their own devices. In the first act of the story, it's easy enough to keep the peace, but naturally that can't last. As wrenches are thrown into the gears of your plan to escape this planet with a stockpile of invaluable rupidium, you're forced to make legitimately tough moral decisions, and no matter what you choose, some of your alters will strongly disagree. There may be a way to get through it optimally, but from what I've seen, it's very much a Kobayashi Maru, a test of how you deal with a no-win scenario.
We need a cure now. What's your call?
Oh god.
Let's go for Maxwell's recipe.
The altar certainly cuts corners with how it tells its story. Anything that isn't a one-on-one conversation between Jan and an altar is shown as a storyboard with a voiceover rather than an animated cutscene. And the few characters who aren't clones are obscured by static in the transmission from Earth, so we only hear their voices.
There's, this is one thing that we've teased some games for, like Redfall. I remember when we got to Redfall and then they literally just didn't have cutscenes. They didn't have any real narrative stuff. It was just all still shots or still like poses and camera moves. Like we poked fun at it. Don't get me wrong. I think my standard is, obviously those are cost cutting measures. That's what the goal is like, hey, we'll save money by not having to motion capture all of the scenes. It's just not that important for the game, so we just won't do it. And I think that that's fine. Generally, it has to do with like price point. It has to do with production, like budget and quality, how it's been marketed, all of that stacks in. But in this case, with a game like this, that's like a management sim and stuff, if they're doing occasional cutscenes that are, that are not motion captured, I don't consider that to be the end of the world. And like static for some characters you're just on like phone calls with, I'm not particularly perturbed.
That sucks.
Some lines are recycled often, like when you present an altar with a personal item you found among the wreckage of the crashed ship to butter them up.
Is it me or does it sound a bit artificial?
But it does a lot with a little in that respect, and very effectively gets across the moral dilemmas, relationships, and mood. There's even a musical performance where all the Yawns collaborate on a song, and it's only a little bit cheesy.
Let it take you with its flow.
It can't be as cringy as like that one ending in Detroit Become Human where all of the androids stand together and like start singing, hold on just a little while longer. And all these robots are singing. And then like the president of the United States is like, stand down. That one was stupid. That one was really cringy. That one was tough to watch. Thankfully, it was kind of tough to get to as well. But yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Every time you move the base to stay ahead of the sun, you'll come to a new map, and each one of them is a visually distinct alien landscape and a maze of interconnected pathways to explore in order to open up the way forward. There are obstacles to clear and work around, which means unlocking new tools and spending your suit's limited energy and resources to grapple up high cliffs or vaporize rocks in your path. It's not difficult, but some of the puzzles you have to solve to gather essential resources for high-level research unlocks require you to uncover and follow a winding trail around the map that can be time-consuming enough to span multiple in-game days. The fast travel system is a clever way to cover more ground though. You can avoid a lot of backtracking by building out your tower network like breadcrumbs as you explore, and there are special pylon types you can place that are specifically for teleporting around. The mechanic for uncovering deep resource veins to place a mining machine is a chore though. It's not hard, but it feels pointless and fiddly because you can just gather your probes and try again if you miss. I suspect that at one point in development you had to spend resources to make them, but that idea was probably scrapped and the cost was removed. All it consumes is time, which is a precious resource, and it isn't a very entertaining use of it. There are other hostile environmental hazards that can mess you up too. The altars very quickly reminded me of developer 11-Bit's other recent game, Frostpunk 2, with its occasional magnetic storms that make venturing outside for resources all but impossible and force you to rely on your stockpiles while you race to repair escalating damage to the base. Things like that keep the pressure on and force you to consider taking measures like making your team work overtime hours, and prevent you from putting too much of management on autopilot even as you unlock more automated resource extraction tools. Multiple times, gathering enough resources to move the base came down to the wire. I had to be ready before the sun caught me, and I made it out by hours, not days.
Okay.
Oh, baby.
This is not good.
Yeah, roll over that.
The Alters is a highly atmospheric sci-fi character study of one man who meets the effects of formative choices he's made throughout his life face to face. Managing Jan's relationship with his alternate selves while extracting enough resources from a hostile alien environment to survive is a balancing act on top of a balancing act, and it cleverly builds up the pressure over the course of its story. Exploration of these barren but eye-catching maps presents a series of puzzles and threats without resorting to blasting aliens, and the conversations and moral dilemmas that arise from Jan's clones are a novel way to approach a game like this.
Mark my words. It's downhill from here.
It's clearly not a big budget game with resources to throw at things like cinematics and character models, but it does a lot with a little to tell its story effectively.
And isn't that kind of refreshing, though? Like, of course, there's standout games that are phenomenal, like Clair Obscur, where, you know, they presumably didn't have the world's biggest budget, and yet they still managed to pull it off. But the reason why that game is so exceptional is because it's just that, an exception to the rule. And in this case, like, I don't know about you guys, I'm getting kind of burnt out on like the massive budget. Like everything is 100 hours. Everything is about just grinding out just nonstop slop. So having more experimental, like weirder games, I like it, dude. I'm here for it. I like weird. I like weird. That's the key. Keep it weird. He took my thing.